Computer, hopefully. Okay. All right. I think we're recording. All right. Hello again out there in the social media world. Hopefully you have been tuning in to Chocolate Milk Cafe all week for our official launch. So today is Thursday, October 8th, are we? Who knows what day it is in this pandemic? So today's chat is going to be with myself and Vickie. You've seen us already on here. If you saw us on Tuesday, we are part of the board. But as we mentioned in that talk, we are also IBCLCs, International Board Certified Lactation Consultants. We can talk a little bit about what that is too, right, Vickie? And we are also facilitators for Chocolate Milk Cafe. My chapter's in Harlem, Vickie.
And I'm with Orange, and I help with Newark as well.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just gonna chit chat a little bit about what IBCLCs are, the need for more Black IBCLCs, and how that all kind of correlates and came together for me, and I'm sure for Vickie, with Chocolate Milk Cafe. So do you want to start a little bit, tell the world a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I feel very passionately about breastfeeding, and at some point, I went from being a lay breastfeeding volunteer counselor for La Leche League, and once the professional level of breastfeeding was born, which is the lactation consultant level, I was very sure that that was a path I wanted to walk on. And so I became a lactation consultant in the year 2001. And it is, I feel, I love it very much. I think it is an amazing way to serve families and to serve women and babies. And I think it's really interesting what might motivate somebody to want to do this kind of work. But usually it's because more than anything, they want to help mothers and babies have a very good start and a good by breastfeeding. Being an African-American lactation consultant is very interesting because I discovered along the way that there weren't very many. So I would go to conferences, and I'm part of being a lactation consultant, board certified, is that you are committed to continuing education. So LaShanda and I both have to study and take courses all the time. It's ongoing. And there's new research and new information about breastfeeding and development all the time. And when I would go to conferences, and it's so interesting, LaShanda, because I've not known you that long. And I have never once gone to a conference where you were in attendance. And the reason I would know is because many times when I would go to a conference, I was the only Black person there.
Same.
So I would have met you had. So I don't know about your experience, but, and I think for me in the beginning, I had a private practice, and majority of the people I served were not Black. I think there was one lady who was Jamaican. That was it. Everyone else was white or Asian Indian or Korean. That was my experience.
Yeah, so same. So similar, like, and I think same for you when you meet people in this, when I met people in this profession, we all kind of come here because we love helping families, right? That's the reason why I wanted to get into it. And because of the experience for breastfeeding my own child was so wonderful, and I loved it, and empowering for me as not only a woman, but a person, just empowering, that I wanted to help have other people help other people feel this experience as well. So that, propelled me into the profession. And then when I got into it, same as you, once I found out that there was an IBCLC of that, of the tier, I'll call it, for lack of a better description, that's what I wanted to do. So for those of you who are maybe tuning into our first, this for the first time. So in the world of lactation, there are different kind of assistance for support, right? There's the peer-to-peer, which is what Chocolate Milk Cafe is. And then there is what is called the CLC or CBC. Those individuals learn about basic latch. And then the IBCLC is so the more clinical of it, I would say, even though it's not a license, it's not a medical program that you go through, but you tend to have more experience with the mother-baby dyad of helping. So if there are issues, then the IBCLC is a person that would ideally be referred to. So when I found out that was available, that's what I wanted to do. And then getting into it, I found that, like you, I was the only one in the room, right? And the reason that we probably haven't met at a lot of conferences is, like you mentioned, that when you get your certification as an IBCLC, it's a continuing education that you have to have in order to keep up your certification. So quite honestly, when I started out and, I had a small child, I live in New York, Manhattan, which is one of the most expensive places to live, and it can become very costly. So luckily, there's a lot of stuff online, even prior to the whole COVID. So I got a lot of my hours or online, or I did things locally, because to go fly away to a conference is quite costly. So, and, just like in anything, there are disparities, which we can hit on a little bit. But one of the disparities of for individuals of color and Black people seeking to be IBCLCs is that it costs a lot to, I would say that taking that exam costs a lot of money, and also working up to get to the exam. So, and then on the other end, like you said, you had a private practice. I was lucky enough to work in a hospital, which isn't very common for an IBCLC that doesn't have an RN affiliated with it, or an RD, which is a nutritionist. So I was able to work in a hospital. But when people would hear that I was a lactation consultant, they'd be like, "Oh, that's so nice. Do you work in your community?" And it was like, meaning like, I just do this kind of for free for my community. And it's like, no, lactation consulting is a profession. And in any profession you want to get into, you get into it to have a livable wage, right? So you take care of your family. So I always found it very interesting that when they heard as a Black IBCLC, I don't think white counterparts would get that. Like, oh, this is something that you do for your community, right? And it was just very, I don't know what the word is, just very disheartening to be associated with, oh, if you're Black and you're an IBCLC, it's like community work that you're doing, where it's like, no, like Black people need help as well as anyone else, right? And as a Black IBCLC, I should be paid for my help, and well. Right? So I ran into a lot of that. I don't know about your.
So okay. So since there aren't many lactation consultants who are Black, right? That means that majority of women who might get help are going to get help from someone who is not Black. Mm-hmm. And so and there are, even in the hospital, a limited number of lactation consultants in general. Mm-hmm. And so so that means that the chance of a Black person getting the help they need is much smaller, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Were you working in a more like a hospital that had a large African American or Black population, or what?
I would say it was, yes, more, it was more Black, more Asian. Because it was a hospital. It wasn't 100% private. Like, they took more Medicaid, more of the Medicaid insurances. And so that, the population and the people who would come to this hospital to birth would be people so it wasn't strictly private insurances, right? So the private insurance, it wasn't so restrictive. Whereas if you had a certain insurance, you couldn't, you wouldn't be able to be admitted, which unfortunately is a reality, right? In our healthcare system, where if you have a certain insurance, you go to certain hospitals, right? So, yeah.
Of course. So, it's interesting that you had mentioned earlier that the lactation consultant isn't a medical whatever, but I consider it an allied health. So in the allied health area, we put things like nursing, dietitians, physical therapists, occupational therapists, that kind of profession in that. And it's a profession where they have a great deal of science, many times, physiology, anatomy, they may have chemistry, biology, nutrition, psychology. I mean, it's actually a pretty hefty requirement for certification. And really it's having a bachelor's degree, really amount of hours in all these different phases. So you're really talking about someone who's in this field, who's a really wonderful educational foundation. And I am a dietitian. I was a dietitian by training. So I came to it that way. But now I look at what the standards are, and really you do need to have that kind of an allied health or scientific kind of foundation in order to even get some basic requirements to start that pathway.
Yeah. No, I only mentioned that in the sense that just as a profession, we know it's not, it's not a licensed, and unfortunately, again, with our insurances and stuff, if you're not a licensed profession, it's like getting on insurance panels to be accepted. So in that sense, I know we know in the work of lactation that the amount of schooling and classes that we have to take are, like you mentioned, very extensive, and we learn so much more. And I often tell people that if you're working with an IBCLC, a lactation consultant, that person has had more training specifically on breast care and breast health than your pediatricians, your OBs, they get a general
all doctors.
All doctors get a general overview. But when you're talking about the lactating breast, like that area of the body, the lactation consultant is really the person who is more skilled and more knowledgeable about that.
Well, they're the specialists.
Yeah.
When we think about this is the specialty field.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And it covers lots of general things, but it is so specialized. And so, they might see one thing in the hospital, she's having difficulty, but the lactation consultant is going to go deeper and really help resolve the issues that might be leading to those difficulties. It is a special.
It's not only the breast or the mammary glands we're thinking about, right? But it's also the anatomy of the baby, right? The oral anatomy of the baby, connecting with the breast, and not only the oral anatomy, but we're looking at how your baby is presenting. Are they tight? Do they have torticollis? Is it something with the latch? How they're, so it's all that connection. And if you think about it, if you've had a baby out there and you're breastfeeding or feeding a baby, and you now know this, but for me it was like one of these like, how come nobody's talking about this? But when you have a baby, later you're at your OB for a visit, and then you take the baby to the pediatrician. They're asking you questions about the baby, your OB's asking you a question about your breast, but who's the person that's connecting those two? Because that's what we need, that puzzle piece, right? And that is your lactation consultant, right? Or your other lactation support people who are helping you, right? So having spaces like Chocolate Milk Cafe, where people can get eyes on, or you're asking questions earlier, is so needed in the lactation world.
It's essential.
Right.
It's essential. And and I feel that it's this community in the African diaspora is deserving of having that level of attention, so that they have a better chance at success. And we, with breastfeeding. And so Chocolate Milk Cafe provides this amazing community of support that has this cultural flavor of the African diaspora to really help support families to achieve their breastfeeding goals and to normalize breastfeeding, right? And part of that picture of normalizing it in a society where breastfeeding is not normal is having specialized attention of the lactation field, lactation consultant, to help this community to move in the direction which it's going, of where breastfeeding is a norm, not a surprise, or once in a while.
Yeah. So
I'm curious for you, as a Black lactation consultant, what has your experience been in working as a lactation consultant with different populations? Do you find that everyone, is comfortable with you being Black? Have you met with some racism? Like, what's your experience been?
I always say I am lucky, I'm fortunate, I guess, that, coming from New York, I guess the path that lactation has I've had with it, that I've seen the whole spectrum of lactation support and working in different populations. So as we know, in New York, you have your very rich, right, to very I've been in penthouses, and I've been in tenement houses. so I have worked with clients that can afford me and don't blink an eye when I say my price, and they'll pay me cash or they'll write a check, no problem. They don't even care about a super bill with getting reimbursed by their insurance. Again, I've been in like Tribeca, where, again, one of the most expensive neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I've been in there and I've seen clients. And then I also worked for the Department of Health, which has a home visiting program. So I was the IBCLC for Harlem, and I would go into, the projects here, or, housing where it's been several families living in a house, and very young sometimes, people who are birthing and have their babies. So I've had the whole gamut. And I can say overall, breastfeeding is similar in the sense that everyone is having kind of the same similar issues. Like, in general, we don't get enough education about it, and it's difficult in the beginning. But obviously, the one major thing is the disparity is the economics of it. Again, you have people that can pay and don't blink an eye, and then the reason that I'm lucky enough, again, that I have it where, and this has always been a passion of mine, that I see those clients and I make the money that I need to make, so I can always do pro bono or work in situations where I can afford my time. So that has always been, since I became a lactation consultant, that has always been the way it has.
Yes.
It just natural, organically for me to do that. So knock on wood, I haven't encountered any racism overtly. I think also I get a lot of the private clients that I do get are word of mouth. And so my circle is, my circle of doulas, whether they're white, Latina, Latinx, Asian, for me, again, we all have kind of the same, I would say, philosophy on life. So the clients that they're taking in are, you know, of course, you know, you never know, but but I've been lucky enough to have people that I have served that are you know, have the same philosophy in life, I would say. At least that's what I have seen. I haven't experienced racism in that way. I have been in.
Well, and I'm in the suburb, right?
Oh, you froze a little bit. Did I lose you? Oh, we were having technical difficulties before. Okay.
All right.
Okay, we're back. We're having some technical difficulties, but hopefully that wasn't too much. So you were starting to say that you're in the suburbs.
Well, it's so, yeah, but it's like urban. Like I'm maybe I shouldn't say suburbs. I'm outside of New York City. You're in New York. I'm in the northern New Jersey area, but most of the people I'm serving is urban. And the hospitals are one of the main ones I'm urban has a living. That's the thing. But some of my colleagues who are lactation, I have a couple of can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, your video was paused for a second, but I could still hear you. So
okay. So I can tell you that by me, where I am located, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 Black lactation consultants. Now, that I should know the number is interesting. A lot.
Yeah. Oh, you keep pausing. Maybe if you keep kind of moving around your office, we can get you back, your picture back.
Some of the
Oh, I'm completely losing you.
God, I don't know. Something with the sound. How about now?
Okay, you're back.
Better?
Yes.
I'm standing by the window. Okay. So some of them really experience racism, like from their colleagues, but also from some of the people they serve. Like if it's in the hospital where they have a lot of private clients, and many of them are not Black, and a lot of Black clients are Medicaid, right? And so, you know, my colleague who is she had been another source of breastfeeding help in the community is the WIC breastfeeding peer counselor. So a group of them, we got to go on to become lactation consultants. They have been peer counselors. And so they're very rich in their background and in their knowledge, and they have experience breastfeeding, which really helps the lactation consultant many times. And so, but she'll find where she'll go into a room and the family says, oh, I don't need your help. I already have someone. And she was told by her colleague to go in, but that family is just not comfortable to have a Black lactation consultant. Mm-hmm. And then I will also find many times that our mothers aren't getting the help from the lactation consultants that are there. Mm-hmm. And they're assuming they're not going to breastfeed.
Yes.
They'll show them how to use formula, right? So Chocolate Milk Café is filling a void. And it's one that is it's a greatly needed to provide this breastfeeding resource to a community that doesn't have access to it all too often. They do not have access, and especially on access.
Yeah, well, exactly, the ongoing. So that was the draw for me. So just a little background about Chocolate Milk Cafe, and hopefully you saw Mama Hakima's talk earlier in the week, but her vision for creating the cafe and the chapters is that there is always a Black IBCLC that is affiliated with the chapter, meaning that, again, it's a peer-to-peer. You don't have to be an IBCLC to become a facilitator. You don't have to be a CLC. You don't have to be a doula. You don't have to. What we really promote is that peer-to-peer, right, support, because that's valuable as well. But having the Black IBCLC associated with the chapter was a big thing, and what also drew me, and I think Vickie as well, to becoming a part of Chocolate Milk Cafe is because one, like you mentioned, the ongoing, or what we, you know, in the kind of medical field, we call it continuity of care, right? So even if that Black person is fortunate enough to get some assistance, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the hospital, what happens is it drops off. Right. And then we know that with lactation and successful lactation and feeding your child is the support behind it. So going to a peer-to-peer group and getting the support and talking to your peers and finding similarities of, you know, oh, you have a 2-week-old and this is happening for me at 2 weeks and stuff like that. But when something a little bit more serious comes up and we need now clinical knowledge to help overcome this, then that was dropping off too in the Black community, because it's either they couldn't afford, you know, a private IBCLC to come in, right? Or again, if you can afford and it happened to be someone who is not Black, then as a Black person in America, you always have that questioning in your mind. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with somebody who doesn't resemble you, of, are they giving me the best care? Right? Are they not, you know, because it's like, again, if you have, and even among our colleagues, we know that there are many white IBCLCs out there that, you know, when I worked in the hospital and I had my white IBCLCs, I would still go in. If I saw that there was a Black woman on the floor, even though she wasn't on my list, I'd somehow make it my point to circle back and go check and see if she got adequate help. Because even as, you know, then even though the hospital is baby friendly and they're supposed to help, you still know that bias that people have lingering in their brain is that person, because they're Black, may not be breastfeeding, or they're just going to end up going to formula anyway. So why am I going to waste my time? Helping, you know? So
and also sometimes in the back of some people's minds, because they may live in such a homogenous space where they're only with white people, they're never with Black people. So sometimes it's like, maybe I don't know how to talk to you. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that sometimes there's that barrier of discomfort because I'm unfamiliar.
Yeah. So to me, you know, coming to Chocolate Milk Cafe and wanting to start these, you know, national, having it in all of our communities, is because of that. Like, you know, again, the continuity of care and getting the continued support. Another huge draw for me, as we've been talking about, as Black IBCLCs in the field, is that when we go to these conferences and knowing, you know, you as somebody who's in New Jersey and can count on one hand how many other Black IBCLCs there are, you know, it's like, again, one of my missions when I became a Black IBCLC, it was automatic to me that I was going to help more people who look like me become IBCLCs as well.
It is for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so Chocolate Milk Cafe has, so like we've been talking about and mentioning, there are, you have to sit an exam, there are classes that you have to take, and there's also mentoring hours where you have to find an IBCLC, someone who's already an IBCLC, and they have to be your mentor, and you watch them and you work with them. So I was finding, and I know of a lot of IBCLCs or aspiring IBCLCs who would reach out to IBCLCs and no one would call them back. And as I had a one person reach out to me, and she told me that it was blatant racism because they didn't want her to become an IBCLC, because then if she became an IBCLC in the community, she would take away business from them, right?
Was that interesting?
You know, so so the Chocolate Milk Cafe has a pathway where if you become a facilitator and you're looking to become an IBCLC, that we have a program to help you on that pathway as well. Wow. So that was a big draw for me. And again, Mama Hakima made it so with our governing agency that can be possible. So it opens up, you know, other pathways for people who are especially Black people who are looking, well, only Black people in Chocolate Café, so looking for ways to become an IBCLC. So that was really important to me. So.
I many times have interned, and I have an intern right now, and she comes to Chocolate Milk Cafe and she desires to become a facilitator as well. So she's an intern on the path to becoming a lactation consultant. So it's really wonderful for her to have that kind of experience working, being a part of a mother support, of a support group, community support group for breastfeeding. It's very, very wonderful. So I think that we are really about here empowerment and the encouragement of people to go into fields where they can really help support others and in their community or what have you. So I know, like, I have this intern, but I know, like, my co-facilitator just became a doula because she's become quite interested in birth. And the next thing on her list is, I want to be a lactation consultant. So, and so this becomes a way, well, like you say, that can help give them the hours they need and what have you. And we have other facilitators who are not only doulas, but maybe they're yoga instructors, or maybe they're midwives or whatever. And what it's doing is bringing areas that the Black community has been, again, not having access to ideas, to ways of thinking about themselves, about birth or what have you, health.
Yeah.
And so this is what I feel that we're a part of. And it's all about empowerment, because normalizing something is about empowerment. Because when it's not normal, it's disempowered.
Exactly.
So I feel very honored to know you, LaShanda. I think you are an extraordinary icon, an extraordinary, empowered, wonderful woman and mother, okay, and lactation consultant. And I think that the community is benefiting greatly from you, and anyone who has access to you is benefiting greatly. And what we want to do is multiply more of these resources across the country, across the board.
And like you said, I think when, again, I hope everyone's been watching, because Takesha actually interviewed Nerlandi, who you were talking about.
I love Nerlandi.
Facilitators. And so what I think, like attracts like, right? And when you get into these circles and we get it, so not only as facilitators, but the attendees that we have, learning what they're about and their power and, connecting with them. Like you said, it's Vickie makes amazing food, and coming to her house, Vickie opened up her house for training, and coming to your house is just like, it was like, just what, you don't feel like a stranger. You just walked in and felt like home, and it was comforting. And I think that's what everyone is looking for, whether they're seeking support for lactation or just seeking support as IBCLC professionally, right? And connecting with other IBCLCs. So it's been amazing just meeting you and everyone, and how we're all coming together, like you said, to make more of us, whether it's more lactating Black families, right? Or more, IBCLCs to help those families. I think it's just been a very, very empowering experience overall.
Yes. And I'm just looking forward to its growth and development, and more people in the African diaspora getting in these fields that are greatly lacking, and that will help our community to have an outcome of better births, healthier births, have our infants, our babies have better outcomes, because we have higher infant mortality, morbidity. We want to change all that. And this is a huge part of changing all of that.
Huge. Of just getting, not just, but of getting your child human milk. I mean, it's amazing. Human milk is amazing. So that's a little bit about, so I just wanted to also say that, so like I mentioned, myself and Vickie, we are IBCLCs, and I'm Harlem, Vickie's East Orange, but we also have Fenda and Bo, who are in Brooklyn, and they're IBCLCs as well. They're affiliated with the Brooklyn chapter, and now we have Lydia out in Kansas City, Missouri, who's affiliated with that chapter. I think we just have 5. I hope I didn't miss anyone, but we currently have IBCLCs.
And there are people on the path.
Yes, and many on the path. And so if you're watching this video and you're an IBCLC, a Black IBCLC in another state, and you're looking to possibly bring a chocolate milk cafe, then we'd love to have you. Well, because I'm also trying to start a comprehensive list of all the Black IBCLCs in every state. Because unfortunately, I know like we have Rhode Island, we have a chapter in Rhode Island, and they do not have a Black IBCLC in Rhode Island. And when I found that out, I was like, what? So it's also my mission to make more Black IBCLCs in every single state. So stay tuned.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I know you're covered, Vickie, and thank you so much for using your lunch break to chit chat with me.
It was an honor, and my boss has been very supportive of Chocolate Milk Cafe. So, because we used to have our meetings here before we went virtual. Yes. So it's really one of the things we do is collaborate with lots of other organizations, and because of the collaboration that I have with other organizations that are serving around birth and health and what have you, a lot of our moms who come to our groups are moms we help in other ways, that we serve in other ways, and through these different various organizations that are very interested actually in what Chocolate Milk Cafe is about, and so I'm excited to see more of that collaboration happen.
Yeah.
And that's how we will create healthier communities for this future generation, for the present and the future.
Yes.
And by the way, I didn't say it, but yes, I was a breastfeeding mom as well of both of my girls exclusively, and I have 5 fully breastfed grandchildren as well. And so that experience is rich. And so whilst I'm a lactation consultant, I'm a mom. And I'm a grandmother. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully everyone got a little taste of what an IBCLC is and what the significance to Chocolate Milk Cafe, and keep tuning in to our launch week. Okay. Did you have something?
Wonderful.
All right. Well, have a great day, Vickie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, LaShanda. Thank you.
We will talk soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.